The night was cold, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made you question why you were out in the first place. The moon hung low, casting an eerie silver glow over the desolate landscape. The forest was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. It was the kind of silence that made you feel like you were being watched, even though you knew you were alone. Or so I thought. I had been hiking for hours, trying to clear my head after a particularly grueling week at work. The stress had been building up, and I needed to get away from it all, even if just for a night. The forest was my sanctuary, a place where I could forget about the world and just be. But tonight it felt different. There was an unease in the air, a tension that I couldn't quite place. I was about to turn back when I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound like a whisper on the wind. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound came again, louder this time, and I realized it was a voice. A weak, desperate voice. "Help, please." I hesitated for a moment, my instincts screaming at me to run, to get as far away from whatever was making that sound as possible. But something inside me, some deep-seated sense of duty or perhaps just plain curiosity, compelled me to investigate. I followed the voice, my footsteps crunching softly on the forest floor. The sound led me deeper into the woods, to a small clearing bathed in moonlight. And there, lying in the center of the clearing, was a figure. At first I thought it was a person, but as I got closer I realized it was something else entirely. The figure was humanoid, but its skin was a pale, almost translucent blue, and its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. It was dressed in what looked like some kind of futuristic armor, though it was cracked and broken in places, revealing deep, oozing wounds beneath. The creature, no, the being, looked up at me with those glowing eyes, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was clearly in pain, its breathing shallow and labored. But there was something else in its gaze, something that made me pause. It wasn't fear or desperation, though those were there too. It was surprise. You're human," it whispered, its voice barely audible. I nodded, unsure of what to say. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. An alien. Here. It seemed impossible, but there it was, lying right in front of me. Why would you help me?" it asked, its voice trembling. I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't even know if I could help it. But I couldn't just leave it there, not like this. So I knelt down beside it, my hands hovering uncertainly over its wounds. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'll try." The being, I decided to think of it as a she, though I had no way of knowing for sure, studied me for a moment, her glowing eyes searching mine. Then slowly she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't know what to do next. I wasn't a doctor, and I certainly didn't know anything about alien anatomy. But I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. So I did the only thing I could think of. I took off my jacket and pressed it against the worst of her wounds, trying to staunch the bleeding. She winced in pain but didn't protest. Instead, she reached up and grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong despite her condition. "Listen to me," she said, her voice urgent. "There's not much time. My ship. It crashed not far from here. There's a device on board, a medical pod. If you can get it, you can save me." I hesitated, unsure if I could even find her ship, let alone operate an alien medical device. But the look in her eyes, pleading, desperate, made up my mind. "Okay," I said. "Where is it?" She pointed weakly to the east. "About a mile that way. You'll see the wreckage. But be careful. There may be others." "Others?" asked, my heart skipping a beat. But she didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered closed, and her grip on my arm went slack. She was still breathing, but barely. I didn't have time to waste. I stood up, my mind racing. My least could do that. Had to. I set off at a run, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest seemed darker now, more foreboding. Every shadow felt like it was hiding something, every sound like a threat. But I pushed on, driven by the image of the alien woman lying helpless in the clearing. It didn't take long to find the wreckage. The ship, or what was left of it, was a twisted mass of metal and glass, half buried in the ground. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, sleek and angular, with strange symbols etched into its surface. The air around it smelled of burnt metal and something else, something acrid and unfamiliar. I approached cautiously, my eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. The alien woman had said there might be others, but I didn't see anyone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The ship's hull was cracked open, and I could see inside to what looked like a control room. The medical pod was easy to spot. It was a large cylindrical device, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. I climbed inside the ship, my hands trembling as I reached for the pod. It was heavier than I expected, but I managed to lift it. As I did, I noticed something else, a small handheld device lying on the floor. It looked like some kind of weapon, though I couldn't be sure. I hesitated for a moment, then grabbed it, stuffing it into my pocket. Better to be safe than sorry. I climbed back out of the ship, the medical pod in my arms, and started back toward the clearing. The journey back felt longer, the forest more oppressive. Every sound made me jump, every shadow seemed to move. But I kept going, driven by the thought of the alien woman waiting for me. When I finally reached the clearing, she was still there, lying exactly as I had left her. Her breathing was even shallower now, her skin paler. I set the medical pod down beside her and opened it, revealing a soft, gel-like interior. "Okay," I said, more to myself than to her. "Let's see if this works." I carefully lifted her into the pod, her body surprisingly light. The gel seemed to envelop her, covering her wounds and glowing faintly as it did. I closed the pod and stepped back, unsure of what to do next. For a moment nothing happened. Then slowly the pod began to hum, the glow intensifying. I watched, holding my breath, as the alien woman's wounds began to close, her color returning. It was working. I let out a sigh of relief, my legs suddenly feeling weak. I sat down on the ground, my back against a tree, and watched as the pod did its work. It didn't take long. Within minutes, the pod's glow began to fade, and the alien woman stirred. She opened her eyes, her gaze immediately finding mine. For a moment we just stared at each other, neither of us speaking. Then slowly she smiled. "You saved me," she said, her voice soft but filled with wonder. I nodded, still too stunned to speak. "Why?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "Why would you help me? I'm not even of your kind." I thought about that for a moment, then shrugged. "I don't know," I admitted. "I guess because it was the right thing to do." She studied me for a moment longer, then nodded, as if she understood something I didn't. "You're different," she said. "Most humans, they fear what they don't understand. But you're not like that."